Next we discuss a one-state solution where everyone has equal rights, lives in peace, and can quickly become a beacon of economic education and resulting prosperity not just for everyone in the area but the whole world. Let us begin by quoting Mises again.
Liberalism is rationalistic. It maintains that it is possible to convince the immense majority that peaceful cooperation within the framework of society better serves their rightly understood interests than mutual battling and social disintegration. It has full confidence in man's reason. It may be that this optimism is unfounded and that the liberals have erred. But then there is no hope left for mankind's future.
To Mises and his intellectual disciples, we either believe that we can succeed in educating the immense majority and thus act accordingly, or there is no hope left for mankind's future. The same applies to our Jew-Gentile misunderstandings and Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If we do not have enough people who believe that we can educate the immense majority about the numerous fallacies which underpin the chaos and see a prosperous future and act accordingly, then there is no hope left for mankind's future. Free market intellectuals are the only people in the world who truly understand how freedom is the only way we will solve this mess. Here we have Palestinian-born economist Saifedean Ammous, who is arguably the most impactful free market economist alive, and author of the sort of Bible of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, The Bitcoin Standard, The Decentralized Alternative to Central Banking, a book that nearly 7 years after initial publication continues to dominate numerous bestseller categories, discussing the need and feasibility of a one-state solution.
I grew up in Ramallah, and when I was a kid, I threw rocks at Israeli soldiers, and I saw one of my friends get shot in front of me. He lost his eye. I've gone through that. I've gone through this experience of really living the conflict very vividly. I've had cousins killed. I've seen all kinds of things happen. I've seen houses demolished. I've seen lands get stolen, and I've managed to come to the conclusion that really the only way out of this is a one-state solution, is just to move away from this notion that we need to move away from this completely destructive idea that it's us versus them, it's them versus us, it's either us or them. We have to drive them into the sea or they're going to drive us into the sea, one or the other. And it's unfortunately becoming more and more predominant. So I spent, after I went to university, I developed this idea that no, I think the only way out of this is to just have a state with everybody there. And I still think of this as the solution. I think I don't want to kick anybody out of their home, even Israeli settlers in the West Bank. I don't think that it would be just, most people in the West, when they say, well, I support the creation of a Palestinian state in West Bank and Gaza, but obviously the Palestinians reject it. No, you don't. Like, you think you do because you watch TV and you just repeat the stupid things that your TV tells you to repeat. But do you support almost a million Israelis now in the West Bank and East Jerusalem? Do you support kicking them out of their homes? Many of them have been there for decades. Do you really support them? Do you really think this is a realistic possibility? Do you think the Israeli government is just going to one day say, all right, time's up, let's give the West Bank to the Palestinians, give them a state over the West Bank, and we're going to make 1 million Jewish refugees move from the West Bank to Palestine? It's not going to happen in any kind of meaningful way. There's no way that Israel is going to do that or accept it. It's politically impossible. It's politically suicidal. And also, I don't believe that these notions of international law are sacrosanct. I don't want to kick people out of their homes, and I think if we do this, it's not going to be a solution. So it's only going to make things worse. So for me, what I would view as the solution is very simple. Everybody stay where they are, and everybody gets to live there, and we just move toward the libertarian order in which property is free. Anybody can own property, anybody can buy, anybody can sell, and we separate ethnicity from property rights. So you can have your property regardless of what religion you're in, and the government isn't out there maintaining property only for one religion. And I think that would also include right of return for Palestinians who were expelled in 1948. And this is something that I believed for quite a while.
Here we have Israeli-born and great free market author and evangelist, Yaron Brook, wisely recognizing how if we had real freedom, we should not even have a Zionist state, and also making the vital case for the prerequisite economic education, something both Yaron and Saifedean are in complete agreement with.
I don't consider myself a Zionist. Like in an ideal world, in my view, there would be no Israel.
My question is this: how, given all of this confused, bloody, chaotic history, what can we actually do here and now to start moving the world away from those endless cycles of blood feuds and towards one that we all three share in idealized form, right? A world that actually universally respects life, liberty, and property. 5 minutes to Safe, I guess you would be first this time. Or Yaron, either one of you guys want to take it.
Happy to go first. Whatever you want to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say we have to educate people about individualism, about the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's no shortcuts in the world. And this is, I agree with Mises' quote 100%. I think it's absolutely right. And the way to achieve peace is to bring about liberty and freedom, to bring about individualism, the caring about individual rights. And that would eradicate anti-Semitism, which of course would, do away with the need for a particular state that allowed Jews to emigrate to because they could go anywhere. Freedom would be fantastic. Freedom is the solution. But the only way to do that, there are no shortcuts here, is to educate people about freedom, to educate people about Mises. And the way to get there is through education. I don't see a shortcut. Politics is not the solution. It's all about educating people about these ideas.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think I agree with everything that Yaron said.
The goal will be the replacement of the current flawed Zionist government entity for a modern free market state where everyone will have real freedom, equal rights, and skyrocketing socio-economic advancement. Name and flag can be determined in some future time but should obviously not single out or exclude any group of people. I'll call it the Holy Land for now. The solution will be introduced in 2 steps. First, we will describe what the final state will look like, some of the problems it will overcome, various benefits, and a few remarks regarding the feasibility of everyone living together, especially given the increasing polarizations due to the Israeli-Hamas war. Second, we will discuss a few steps to transition from our current state with its Israeli-Hamas war and ramifications to this final one state. Overcoming Zionism and related chaos should be done via a one-state solution that properly ends the misguided ideology. Any Zionist state, no matter how small, as long as it coerces a foreign religion, anthem, flag on Palestinians should be seen as unnecessary and somewhat immoral, and the product of bygone years when we were understandably less civilized, similarly to how we see the former British Empire or slavery. Any Zionist state reaffirms the insulting erroneous fallacy and slap to Darwin that is at the core of Zionism that says that some Homo sapiens are the good and civilized Homo sapiens who must live apart from the bad and evil Homo sapiens. No self-respecting Muslim who really believes in God, in the moral duty to support what is just and fight what is unjust, and knows the history of Zionism, and its numerous fallacies will understandably tolerate the Zionist fallacies and state. What they will do is forgive with compassion, just like we can likewise expect the Homo sapiens who have absorbed a Jewish identity to forgive the naive anti-Semites who just made understandable mistakes. If with countless restrictions, organizations like Hamas can arise and launch rockets, allowing a Palestinian state right next door which may easily acquire even deadlier weapons is an understandable fear and risk that Zionists are not willing to take. As Netanyahu wisely explains, every area that we evacuate we've received terrible terror against us. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, also today in Samaria, and therefore I clarify that, any other arrangement in the future, the State of Israel has to control the entire area from the river to the sea. This truth I say to our American friends, and I also stop the attempt to impose on us a reality that will jeopardize us. A prime minister in Israel has to be able to say no, even to the best of friends. To say no when you need to and to say yes when you can. Technology is making it increasingly easy for small groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis to develop deadlier and more sophisticated weapons. And likewise, the Israeli Zionist ideology has better ways to spy on the whole planet, and likewise silence and kill its critics. It is absurdly obvious how this process can only end in a final world war-like calamity. Thus a one-state solution, just like anti-Semitism, is an intellectual error to be overcome via reason, logic and education instead of force via hate speech laws, or separation via Zionism. Zionism too is an intellectual error to be overcome likewise and not via armed resistance. The Soviet Union and underlying socialist myths were ultimately overcome not in some great war, but by helping enough socialists themselves overcome their fallacies. If Russia, a relatively modern free market economy where over 50% of its population is employed in the private sector by over 3 million private sector businesses, is now led by Putin, a former KGB agent whose job at one time was to help enforce socialist myth, why should we not have faith that a likewise naive and dangerously Zionized Mossad agent today may be a future leader in the area? Again, violence does nothing to overcome the underlying fallacies that lead to conflicts, whether the fallacies are anti-Semitic or Zionist ones. Per Mises, we must focus on the ideas and overcome the fallacies which then lead to the hatreds, polarizations, and wars.
It is ideas that group men into fighting factions, that press the weapons into their hands, and that determine against whom and for whom the weapons shall be used. It is they alone and not arms, that, in the last analysis, turn the scales.
And similarly we must look at history trying to understand how people fooled themselves into disastrous ideologies instead of just making condemnations.
Neither as judges allotting praise and blame nor as avengers seeking out the guilty should we face the past. We seek truth, not guilt. We want to know how things came about to understand them, not to issue condemnations.
Decades of armed resistance towards Zionism has only fueled Zionist fallacies and power, leading us to where we are today, with the Middle East and especially Gaza totally destroyed due to Zionist military interventions, American economic prosperity and future bankrupted by yearly over $1 trillion military budgets and related debt and inflation used to finance Zionist-inspired wars. European culture and stability destroyed by millions of Muslim refugees poorly integrated into economically naive European welfare states, Zionized ideologues in more positions of power and influence in the West than ever before, spreading more Zionist clash of civilizations, or there is something intrinsically wrong with Islam myths leading to more Zionist-related polarizations and chaos, and of course, the destruction of freedom of speech throughout Europe and the US. Before even discussing the actual details, any solution will need to find various Gorbachevs or Deng Xiaopings, in other words, respected leaders who can admit that their respective populations have made mistakes which have contributed to the problems.
Hi, Larry.
Hi.
President Gorbachev, I'm honored to talk to you. Do you believe that communism as a political philosophy and a system has still something to offer to the world?
I think that in principle, as a system, as a philosophy, as a model of organizing a society, of reforming society, has to be rejected based on our experience, the experience of our country and of Eastern European countries.
First we need Israeli Zionist leaders who can admit that Zionism, as with Soviet and Maoist communism, had been an understandable error. Just like the communists continued to wreck their economies as their various central plans failed, so have the Zionists and their Zionized American politicians increased the chaos, suffering, and expanding worldwide censorship, tyranny and polarizations as they keep pushing the flawed ideology. One of these potential Zionist Gorbachevs is Yaakov Sheret, who comes from Zionist royalty, being the son of Israeli Prime Minister Moshe Sheret, and has impeccable Zionist credentials, having served in the Palmach Pre-State Military Unit, the Jewish Brigade in the British Army during World War II, the Israel Security Agency, Shin Bet, and more. Yaakov is well aware of the monumental error and calamity that Zionism has been. In a Haaretz interview published in September 19, 2021, he mentions,
"In the end, Israel is a country occupying and abusing another people. As opposed to the false mantra, I have no other country, the facts show that there are other countries. There is more than one land. Over 1 million Israelis live abroad. The ideological Zionist commitment evaporates the more the generations pass. People understand that there are better places where to raise children and live. Everywhere has problems, life itself is a problem, but Israel has existential problems. Suddenly people say, we know what needs to be done, for everyone, and are prepared to force their ideas on the public. Who put you in charge? The moment Zionism called for the Jews to immigrate to Israel, in order to establish here one home for the Jewish people, which will be a sovereign state, a conflict was created. The Zionist idea was to come to a place where there were people, members of another religion, completely different. Have you seen anywhere in the world where the majority would agree to give in to a foreign invader, who says, our forefathers were here, and demands to enter the land and take control? The conflict was inherent and Zionism denied this, ignored it. So violent conflict began, and war and another war and another war. If Israel is not okay, I'm not okay either, as someone who pays taxes here. For a certain period there was great hope here that something new had been created. I was a part of that. But now, Zionism, from my point of view, has disappeared. All the promises we made disappeared. I am not comfortable with this. Our national agenda is blood, death, and violence. Israel lives on the sword and sharpens it. I am completely alienated from this. I'm also disappointed in the character of the state. When I see the Prime Minister with a kippah on his head, I don't feel good. This is not the Israel I want to see. How did it happen that this new place, that was to have brought innovations, became the blackest place, controlled by the nationalist ultra-Orthodox? How is it that here of all places, there's reactionism and zealotry, messianism, the desire to expand and control another people?
Prosperity for Homo sapiens, regardless of what identity they have absorbed, comes from freedom, free markets, etc. Not having some state that discriminates based on such identity, especially one founded by economically clueless ideologues and the massive displacement of over 700,000 people. Shit happens. Again, the smart atheist Soviets and their countless great scientists and mathematicians and chess players fucked up, big, and so did the Chinese. Economic ignorance likewise misled many Jews into preaching for Zionism instead of economic freedom. We also need Islamic leaders to admit how their at times conspiratorial and other misguided and unsympathetic remarks about Jews have been contributors to Zionist fallacies. Where could we possibly find a large group of well-educated secular Darwinians who can easily see Jews and Palestinians as just fellow Homo sapiens and realize that regardless of all the chaos and increasing hatreds that the Israeli-Hamas war is bringing, we must continue to try to find a way to live together in peace? In Israel, of course. In July 1, 2024, over 8 months after the October 7 start of the war, leading Israeli intellectual Yuval Noah Harari gave a very wise and hopeful speech to thousands of very smart secular Jews in Tel Aviv who can hopefully play a leading role in pulling strings, conspiring, and plotting for peace.
פעם לא היה עם יהודי. ולא היה עם פלסטיני. לפני 100 מיליון שנה היו פה דינוזאורים. לפני 100,000 שנה היו פה ניאנדרטלים. לפני 10,000 שנה כבר הגיעו לפה בני אדם כמונו, הומו ספיינסים, אבל אף אחד מהעמים המוכרים לנו עוד לא היה קיים. לא היו אז צרפתים או גרמנים, ולא היו יהודים או פלסטינים. הזמן יוצר עמים. אפשר להתווכח מתי בדיוק נוצרו העם היהודי והעם הפלסטיני, אבל מה שבאמת חשוב זה שעכשיו שניהם קיימים פה. האמת המרה על הסכסוך הישראלי-פלסטיני היא שכל צד חושש שהשני פשוט מנסה להעלים אותו ושני הצדדים צודקים. הפחד שלנו שהפלסטינים רוצים לחסל אותנו מוצדק לגמרי. והפחד של הפלסטינים שאנחנו רוצים לחסל אותם גם מוצדק לגמרי. זו לא פרנויה, זה בוחן מציאות תקין. במסמך העקרונות והמדיניות שלו קובע החמאס שכל הארץ שבין הירדן לים התיכון, מרס אל נקורה בצפון ועד לאום רשרש בדרום, שייכת לעם הפלסטיני לבדו, והוא לא מכיר באיזשהו קשר או זכות של יהודים לארץ הזו. מנגד, ממשלת ישראל הנוכחית הכריזה בקווי היסוד שלה שלעם היהודי זכות בלעדית ובלתי ניתנת לערעור על כל מרחבי ארץ ישראל. כל צד חושב שהמרחב כולו שייך רק לו. אבל האמת היא שהעולם הוא גדול, ואפילו הארץ הצפופה שבין הים לירדן גדולה מספיק בשביל שני עמים. אין כאן מחסור אובייקטיבי באדמה. יש מספיק שטח בין הים לירדן כדי לבנות בתים, דרכים, מפעלים, בתי ספר ובתי חולים לכולם. אבל אף פעם לא מאוחר מדי לתקן. מלחמה היא לא חוק טבע, היא בחירה של בני אדם. ובכל רגע אפשר לבחור אחרת. בכל רגע אפשר להתחיל לעשות שלום. נכון, ניסינו כבר לעשות שלום ולא היינו טובים בזה. אז מה? אנחנו גם לא כאלה מוצלחים בלעשות מלחמה, וזה לא מונע מאיתנו לנסות עוד אחת ועוד אחת. כל המלחמות הובילו אותנו אל התהום. הגיע הזמן לנסות שוב שלום. וזכרו, המלחמה היא ניסיון של נפשות קטנות להעלים את המורכבות של המציאות. השלום הוא גדול, הוא יכול להכיל המון. תודה.
The Holy Land will be a modern free market state where the central government should be minimal in the sense that it should only be involved in protecting private property and should clearly be forbidden from ever going into education, elderly care, any kind of socialized medicine, etc. This is not up to democratic change and is important so that Jews will not fear a larger Muslim population eventually taking their freedom's wealth, which would definitely be the case if they were forced to pay for massive public sector welfare state bureaucracies attempting to provide equal access funding for education, health services, elderly care, etc. that the economically ignorant though well-intentioned public always falls for. Free marketeers know that democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. Thomas Jefferson. It is not democracy that brings prosperity, it is the competitive knowledge discovery that arises from private property and thus freedom. The voluntarist constitution provides a great foundation for such a legal structure. Jews and Muslims and Christians, everyone, will have the obvious freedom to pool their wealth to create their own privately funded educational systems, charities, and be free to discriminate if they so wish based on religion, sex, whatever their customs or free individuals agree upon. Palestinians who were expelled during various wars and their descendants will obviously have the right to go back to the lands they were expelled from. If the lands have since been developed a simple starting solution to the potential conflicts and a way to provide some restitution to the Palestinians and help get this new country on a rapid path to amazing prosperity is as follows. Jews keep all lands and homes and buildings they currently have developed and are clearly being used for productive purposes, even the settlements in the West Bank. Then we take the other land, including the south which is currently mostly desert, and using some simple software we distribute it to all Palestinians and their descendants, who were dispossessed, thus privatizing most of the country. A similar effort should be made so that Jews who were expelled from European and Muslim countries can regain their lost property. So far this simple framework accomplishes the following. Jews should be pretty happy, no fear of a demographic majority that can then interfere with your freedom and/or property, no need to pay for the education of non-Jews or other Jews for that matter, freedom from the bloated, competition-immune and prosperity-destroying Israeli state which treated its citizens like lab rats during COVID mania. No draconian uprooting or potentially economically devastating disruptions. Palestinians regain their freedom and land. Since this minimal state will have minimal taxes or regulations, it will quickly blossom in prosperity. Foreign investment will rush into the country to hire Palestinians, competition between them for their labor will quickly increase their pay wealth. The land will quickly increase in value, providing much deserved compensation for the Palestinians. Eilat, Israel's most southern city, is less than 4 hours from Jerusalem. I'm estimating each Palestinian over 18 will get over an acre of land close to Jerusalem in a country that will soon skyrocket in socio-economic prosperity, and serve as an example beacon of progress. In just 30 years Dubai went from sparsely populated desert to modern metropolis. New Palestine, with its even freer and thus more competitive and productive future economy, proximity to already advanced social order via Israeli companies who themselves will accelerate their own advancement by being free of the bloated Israeli state, proximity to other major cities like Cairo and Damascus, all now easily integrated with peace and unhampered commerce, will likely surpass Dubai-like prosperity in less than 5 years. Next, a few thoughts regarding the feasibility of this proposal. As things are today, over 20% of Israelis are Arabs. So Jews and Arabs already getting along in a single state already happens relatively peacefully, and even with all the errors associated with current Zionist state, like having a flag and national anthem that represents people whose grandparents, Jews, expelled the family members and coreligionists of 20% of its population. The above suggested changes will only make it even easier to get along. Initially, those whose identities distrust each other the most will just live in more segregated parts of the country and neighborhoods, just like happens in the USA with states, cities, and neighborhoods with higher proportions of various groups like blacks, Asians, Hispanics, etc. In the USA there are no black or Hispanic or white militias attacking each other, and the same would occur in this new country. Blacks were once slaves with an understandable hatred of whites, yet freedom and emerging truths that we all are just fellow Homo sapiens has arenas full of mostly white people paying to see mostly black basketball players. This proposed solution first involves transforming the current Israeli state into a new modern free market state free of the Zionist fallacies and injustices, and then giving equal rights to everyone in Gaza and the West Bank and incorporating those areas into the new country. Smaller governing areas based on geographical location similar to the cantons in Switzerland will further provide additional freedom to tailor various rules according to local populations. Professor David Beito elaborates in his essay, A Way Out of the Israel-Palestine Conflict, a Swiss-style canton system. The locus of political power in Switzerland is the largely self-governing canton. There are 26 of them, and they vary both in official language, usually German, Italian, or French, and in majority religion. Some cantons even have official churches, though minorities maintain freedom of religion. Because of the small size of each of these units, the costs of leaving for any discontented individual is relatively low. In great part because of the canton system, Switzerland was better able than its neighbors to weather the carnage of the Reformation. The wars of that historical period make the current Palestinian-Israeli conflict seem mild. Proposals to implement cantons in Israel-Palestine are not new. Some of them date back nearly a century. An early pioneer was Itamar Ben-Avi, who had impeccable Zionist credentials. He was the first person in modern times to learn Hebrew as a native speaker. He had been brought up to speak it by his father, who had been instrumental in recreating that ancient language. In 1930, Ben-Avi proposed dividing the British Mandate of Palestine into 6 Jewish, 6 Muslim, and 3 Christian cantons. The spirit in Palestine among Jews and non-Jews, he declared, is very much in favor of the plan, because it would lead to peace and harmony. Next we discuss further details of the solution and various steps to make it happen. 1. Since we will soon have a one-state solution where everyone gets along as equals, the Israeli-Hamas war ends, all Israeli hostages are released by Hamas, and Israel releases all Palestinian prisoners. Israel also ends all restrictions and occupation of the West Banks and Gaza. Hamas will have no need for armed resistance since the occupation will end, and soon the entire Israeli Zionist state will end as well. This step can obviously happen immediately. 2. We rename the current Israeli state to something like New Palestine or something else not tied to any religion, ethnicity, etc. This step can happen within weeks. 3. We quickly privatize and deregulate all government-owned assets related to education, healthcare, etc. are sold to the highest bidders. The IDF is defunded, but Jews obviously remain free to keep their arms. Taxes are drastically cut accordingly. This transition can take about 3 months. 4. Also starting immediately, all females and children under perhaps 14 years old, men above 50 years old, and all men with children, essentially everyone who is not a single military-aged male, living in Gaza or the West Bank are free to leave these areas and join the general population of New Palestine as equal citizens. They can return to their property if available or get their plot of parcelled land. 5. Every month a quarter of the remaining military-aged male population is also given full freedom and rights. My guess is that after 1 or 2 months things will go so smoothly that by the end of the 2nd month we can just give all remaining men equal rights and freedoms and kumbaya, world peace ensues. 6. We place a 20 feet solid gold statue of Ludwig von Mises in front of the Western Wall to constantly create interest and admiration for the man who has likely done the most in the recent past to save the Jews and all of mankind from the economic ignorance which underpins most of our problems. And let us also rename Ben Gurion Airport to Murray N. Rothbard Airport while we are at this sort of thing. The very mention by a few prominent Israeli and Islamic leaders that we will begin to work towards a solution along the above lines, as well as getting a few major Muslim and Jewish athletes or influencers, will greatly increase the feasibility of a proposal along these lines, persuade people, and reverse the polarizations and direction towards the final world war. Loudly clamoring for a solution along these lines brings us free marketeers tremendous advantages. We will be the only ones actually making noise and bringing attention to a rather simple, and thus easy to spread viral plan. It gives us an opportunity to teach and sort of piggyback basic economics as we explain to people how prosperity will skyrocket, helping us in our more ambitious worldwide free market educational efforts, which is obviously the key to everything. Naive thinkers may find such a rapid free market intellectual transformation impossible, but this is precisely what Javier Milei is achieving in Argentina right before our very eyes. To these ignorant naysayers we must say,
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Javier Milei is already treated like a savior Moses by top Zionist leadership. They are intellectually ready for a free market one-state solution. And their desire to annex more land only makes the one-state solution easier to implement. While at this, the Russia-Ukraine war can be quickly solved in a similar manner. Just create a new similarly very low-tax country, or countries, where the free people will be neither ruled by the Russian or Ukrainian bureaucracies. It is that simple. The key is, of course, the proper understanding of economics and a blame-free sympathetic approach to our problems which blames understandable economic ignorance, misunderstandings, and our tribal human nature as the source of our problems, instead of getting too deep into the good versus evil moral sphere, whereas Mises tells us, no social cooperation is possible where such an attitude prevails. Unfortunately, as already discussed, the Russia-Ukraine war is to a significant degree yet another outgrowth of Jew-Gentile coevolution and misunderstandings, so we have to solve that mess first.